All right. Well, we're speaking with Scott Wilson from Echo Bay Media. Their office is here in Hamilton, Ontario, and Scott has traveled around the world as a licensed pilot, as a scuba diver, and for our purposes today, as an off-road adventure motorcyclist. And you've been to over 80 countries, all 7 continents, and your company does video work, but you also do a lot of TV. Sorry?
Yeah, that's right.
See a couple of Gemini Awards on the table there. So thank you for joining us today. We're going to ask a couple of questions, and this is regarding motorcycle safety, and we might talk to you a little bit about on-road, but mostly we're going to be interested in your experiences as an off-road rider. First question is, off-road motorcycling is challenging, and taking some safety precautions is essential. Given that you ride off-road in remote locations and in countries all over the world, what are your safety tips for adventure riders?
For myself, never riding alone. And when I'm unfamiliar with the area, especially overseas, then riding with a local is a huge added benefit. Nobody knows the trails and the roads and what kind of precautions need to be taken than the locals, obviously. But even when riding in my own backyard, I think riding with someone else is just a safety blanket that I can't do without. The other obvious ones, at least to me that are obvious, are just that whether I'm on-road or off-road is always riding with gear on. You know, whether it's literally I have to go down to the corner and grab something and come back. I mean, a helmet's a no-brainer, but I'll wear the coat, I'll wear the gloves, it's just a part of, that's what, if I'm riding, that's what has to go on. The boots, the pants, the coat, it's just what it is. Because I know the one time I don't is the one time I'll wish I'll have had it on. So whether it's off-road or on-road, that's sort of the main thing. And sometimes that, you know, it feels like a big ordeal if you're overseas in Southeast Asia, in the Middle East, in Jordan. It can get extremely hot, and so there's always these reasons you're kind of rolling around in your head. Oh, well, you know, if I just take the jacket off, I don't need the jacket today or whatever else. For me, it's like, no, I know with my luck, it's that one day I don't wear it that it'll come back to haunt me, sort of thing. So those are kind of the simple ones, is that I always love to ride with somebody else, and it's just as much a safety thing as it is an enjoyment thing, because even though you're not necessarily talking as you go, some people can with, you know, the communications units and things like that, but when you stop for, you know, a drink of water, you stop for coffee, you stop for just to stretch your legs, and you say, oh, did you see that cool thing just, you know, a couple miles back? And no, yes I did, or no I didn't. You share the experience with somebody, and even when I'm traveling and it's not motorcycling involved, it's the same rule for me. Is I love being able to share that with somebody, because it just kind of enriches the experience anyway. The added benefit is when you're riding and you've got someone else there, it increases the safety tremendously, obviously. So.
Well, it sounds like an excellent philosophy. You've thought about it. How do you prepare yourself, and I'm talking both physically and mentally, before you go out on, especially out, like perhaps just out on a ride, but like when you're doing a trip, one of your big trips?
Physically, I mean, I try to stay as physically fit as also having 2 young children will allow me to. So it's trying to just stay remotely physically fit. You know, running has always been kind of a part of my life to maintain a certain stamina and everything, and physical fitness. Before doing longer trips, I'll just ride the bike, or even if it's not going to be my bike that I'm riding, if I'm going overseas somewhere, is just put in a little bit longer rides. And it's kind of the same training philosophy that one might do for a marathon. It's that you don't go out and just, you know, ride for 7 straight days, or for a week, or 2 weeks straight, or a month straight, or whatever, just like that. You kind of got to build up to it. The butt will thank you for it later too, of just kind of building up that muscle memory and everything else of going out and just sort of getting used to it. So it's no different when, you know, I know I'm going to put in a longer journey. I'll build up to it, even if it is overseas on my own bike at home and things like that. Mentally, I don't know. I mean, I guess for myself, I'm a real planner anyway, so I'll pore over maps and I'll pore over all the details. I'll make checklists for myself. And I think, again, being a diver, being a pilot, these are sort of disciplines in life that require a lot of self-discipline because your life depends on it. And I realized just in more recent years that why is it that I'm attracted to these things in life, to motorcycle riding, to diving, to flying? And I think because it requires so much self-discipline, that is what attracts me to those things. Your life is on the line when you're doing those things. There's obviously a certain amount of risk involved, but you mitigate the risk by, for me, making these checklists and going through it and feeling comfortable so that you're at ease. Because when you're doing these things, the reason I love them so much is they force me to switch everything else off in my life. All the other worries and stresses when I'm riding a bike go away because I have to focus on riding that bike, and I love that. All the other stresses go away. When I'm driving in my car, when you're doing other things, it's way too easy for all those other stresses and things to come back into your head. And what do I have to pick up on the way home? And what am I doing tomorrow? And all those sort of things. When I'm on the bike, I don't have time for that. I have to focus entirely on the riding, and I love that. So that kind of mental preparedness, I think, applies to on-road and off-road as well.
That's a great answer. There's a lot of non-riders aren't really aware of this, but especially off-road riding is physically demanding, and it's considered an excellent form of exercise.
Sure.
As a matter of fact, like motocross riders, things like that, they are elite athletes, and so we kind of like to get that message out to people too. That just because you actually have an engine under your butt doesn't mean that you're not completely engaged in the act of riding.
Absolutely.
All your muscles, all of your, including your wetware, your brain.
Exactly. There's a huge amount of core strength involved in riding off-road, especially when a lot of times you're standing up, you're standing on the pegs, and you're moving your body around. It's a lot of times just very minor little movements in balance, but it's akin to standing on an exercise ball and kind of working that core strength and that balance at all times, especially when you're moving much slower through obstacles and over terrain. When you're going much slower, the balance is all that much more on, the onus is on you to be making those fine-tuned little adjustments and stuff. So it is, it's physically demanding, and you'll thank yourself for some sort of physical training leading up to it. But anyone who's ridden off-road knows that, there's no greater workout. You ride for an hour and stop, and you'll just be dripping sweat off you. It's fantastic.
That brings up a really good point. You recently wrote a really good article. It was in Canada Moto Guide about a trip that you did through Death Valley, California. Yeah. But I wanted to use a quote in it. In it, you wrote, you said, "The roads were in good condition until about 50 kilometers from the playa," which is your hotel, or
no, it was
from a camp.
Just a place in Death Valley that we were going to make camp for the night. So the playa is like a Spanish word for beach. In this case, it's just sort of like a dried up lake bed, kind of almost akin to like the salt flats, sort of thing.
Yeah. So not to confuse people, that there's no beach. No beach in Death Valley. But you said at this point the road turned into loose, jagged gravel with occasional sandy swaths to keep you on your toes. This is when my intensity grew, being impossibly far from cell service, while riding a brand new bike that wasn't mine certainly kept my attention. I was focused on the road ahead like an astronaut navigating a meteor shower. So you talk in that article about the size of the bike that you were riding, and you were on a BMW, like an 850cc, 500-pound plus bike. An adventure bike. But are bigger bikes more challenging when crossing mixed terrain and conditions? That's sort of like, I get the sense that you were more accustomed to being on a lighter, smaller bike. Absolutely, and that's just, again, you're comfortable with what you know, what your own surroundings are. Behind you can see two small, agile little dirt bikes that I'm used to using, and a light bike is easy to maneuver. And for somebody who's a relatively small, a vertically challenged person, as they say, getting on a bigger bike for the first time, a strange bike to you, can be a little off-putting. And like I say in the article, it's not it's a press bike. It's not mine. It's a brand new bike. You don't want to do anything to it and everything.
So you've kind of got that anxiety in that, and even if it's your own bike, a bigger bike I think does require a little bit more oomph and a little bit more strength, because there's just more like the physics of it. There's more inertia at work. So when a big bike starts to go, it takes that much more effort to counter that action that's happening, right? So you kind of have a sideways action. The bike wants to go down. To wrestle that bike back is going to take a lot more energy and strength. Now, that being said, I'm sure there are a lot of people who have ridden big bikes for a long time, and with experience and with training, anything can feel at home. So for me, that was a strange bike in a strange land.
Yes.
And it certainly took 110% awareness of just picking lines and constantly looking at the road in front of you without getting buggy-eyed,
So I'm going to say we could probably just extrapolate a little bit from that
Sure.
to say that just because you're a good rider, experienced rider, if you're used to a particular bike or a particular size bike or style of bike, doesn't necessarily mean you can just hop on and go drive this like you never, like you've been driving it all your life. I think we encourage people to, when you're on a new bike, to start off slow and get familiar with the bike, and
Absolutely.
every bike has its own characteristics as well. You actually mentioned at the last part of the Death Valley trip, the weather turned on you, and you were going through like freezing ice pellets, and some of it was highway riding.
It was to get back to Los Angeles. Yeah.
But you mentioned that you were like literally riding the bike at a 45-degree angle to fight the wind.
Yes.
Like to compensate for the push of the wind.
Yes.
And on a lighter bike, that would have been even more difficult.
Probably, yeah. So
Sometimes there's
again,
an advantage to that extra weight.
there definitely is, and
Yeah.
when you're doing long distances and when you're doing highway riding, a bike like that certainly has its advantages for just being more comfortable,
Yeah.
and it can accommodate a larger tank for longer range. So there's always give and take for deciding on picking a larger bike for a longer journey can make a lot of sense. But yeah, I think like anything in life, the confidence comes with experience, and confidence is a very good thing on a motorcycle as long as the confidence is earned, I think, and so you can't buy the confidence and get on it and go. You have to earn the confidence and through experience and through training, and then you're much less likely to make mistakes once you have that earned confidence, I believe.
I like that term, earned confidence. I think a lot of experienced riders would probably share that. They might not have used that term
Right.
before, but they're like. I will ask you a little bit about specifically the experience of the gear. You've done a lot of riding in very hot conditions in countries that are generally warmer than most Canadian riders have to deal with. But as we experienced last summer, it can get hot here too. We had record-breaking temperatures, and I did talk to a number of riders who said, I wish that I had even better gear. Like, they were talking about having gear that didn't breathe properly, because they're accustomed to, not having to deal with extreme temperatures.
Yeah.
So, do you have any tips for us for keeping from overheating while still wearing the appropriate safety gear? And
For me, I think
you can mention brands if you want to.
Sure,
It
yeah.
doesn't matter.
I've had a lot of really good experience with Alpine Stars, and that's not to say that other brands don't do the same thing, but looking for, especially for off-road riding, adventure riding, looking for something that has a huge amount of zips and ventilation. If you can open pockets and zips here, there, and everywhere else, as soon as you create airflow, obviously you start to feel a lot better.
Okay.
There's, again, talking about the trade-off with large bike versus small bike, going for something that is truly waterproof and also something that's truly breathable is almost impossible to find, I find. So it's one of the sad parts about motorcycling is it does cost a bit of money. If you want to cover all your bases properly.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in my closet, I have an early and late weather jacket that's very thick and will keep me warm, and very few zips because I don't need it. I have something that's for rain specifically. I have something that's for the summer, and it's basically all mesh. with armor in it, and that's about it. And yeah, you kind of have to pick your battles and know what it is, but it might not always come with one jacket. I know one thing for adventure riding and off-road riding, a jacket that has the ability to put like a water pack, like a camel pack in, was an absolute lifesaver in the Middle East to be able to ride. And even while riding, I had it tucked up in my helmet. I could just reach over and grab it and
stay
suck
hydrated.
some water and keep going, because yeah, even though you have a jacket that might be breathing really well in an arid climate, you're losing a lot of water just moving through the air. That's instantly evaporating because you're not really necessarily feeling the sweat that you're sweating because it's evaporating right away. So you're dehydrating very, very quickly. In humid summers like we have here in Ontario and parts of Canada, you might be dripping and dripping sweat, dirt riding on the trails and all that sort of stuff. And again, because the air is moving through, it's keeping it cool, the sweat's doing its job, but you're losing a lot of water. And as you get to very, very early dehydration stand, then you can make poor decisions and bad mistakes and things like that. So resting isn't just for the weak. I mean, resting is for everyone. Resting is a crucial part of keeping your mind sharp, and then hydrating to keep your body sharp as well.
Have you ever had a case where you noticed those early warning signs, you see spots or anything where you go, I need to?
Yeah, but I don't think I could attribute it necessarily to dehydration, but more just from general fatigue, and that can it kind of be a blurred line with dehydration and things like that. But long days of riding, trying to get somewhere, and whether again off-road or on-road, there's sort of they say in flying with pilots, there's get home-itis that people suffer from. So they make poor decisions because they just have to get home. So you as a pilot, you might look at the weather and say, there's bad weather closing in, but I think I can get home in time, and the wife's waiting, or I've got work in the morning, or whatever it is, and you make that poor decision just because you feel that need to get home. And I think I can apply that same kind of rule to riding as well. Is that it's like, oh well, if you're on a multi-day ride, you were supposed to be in this town for that night, and that's where the hotel is, and whatever else. It's starting to get dark, or the weather's closing in, or you're really getting tired, and you start making those bad decisions. And that's unfortunately when things happen, bad things happen, is making those decisions where you start to stretch yourself beyond, what you're able to do, whether it's your mind or your body. So.
I guess the important thing is to get home, not to get home when you originally planned.
That's right, exactly. And if that means just an extra rest, or if that means, in some cases, knowing yourself and saying, all right, well, I'm going to stay here tonight instead of there tonight.
Absolutely.
So be it.
Okay, that's good. What are some of your favorite rides in Canada? Because, of course, our viewers are
sure
mostly Canadians.
Yeah. I've done a lot of riding outside of Canada, but here at home, there's still so much more to explore. My own backyard, the Niagara Peninsula, has a lot of fantastic riding for those day rides. Just an afternoon when I can escape for an hour or two. There's a lot of lovely riding right down in my own neck of the woods. A favorite ride of mine was going up and around Lake Superior as well, towards the prairies. So from Sault Ste. Marie all the way around Lake Superior to about Thunder Bay is just mind-blowing. And a lot of people think of that long, sweeping, beautiful scenery of the mountains. Well, the kind of low, old mountains of Northern Ontario are just mind-blowing scenery and really good pavement. Really good long sweeping turns, open turns where you really get a good look at what's coming as well, which is always, again, confidence inspiring as a rider to see what's coming and feel really good about where you're going and what's coming up on the road is really, really nice.
Excellent. When you're shooting for a show, and you've done, I know you've done Departures, Descending, Into the Rising Sun. Are there any others that you've done? Just while we're name dropping.
Those are the ones where I'm in front of the camera, but yeah, I've certainly done a lot where I'm
behind the scenes. The most exciting footage that we often see is you riding on your own, but you actually have team vehicles traveling with you and a crew of people with you. So you already touched on this earlier, but I guess you advise people to ride with a buddy or as a group when heading off-road in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for TV, it's a necessity, but even when we're not filming for TV, like I was mentioning earlier, I mean, being able to share the experience with somebody, to me, makes it so much more enriching. And most of my friends do the same thing. Nobody you're calling or texting your buddy, like, oh, where are we going to go today? Oh, I can't. It's like, all right, well then, I guess I'm staying at home. I'm not going to ride by myself. It's just not the same, It's, there are times when I just want to ride into work and I ride solo, and that's fine. But when it comes to adventures, and certainly when I go off-road, I don't trust any brand of motorcycle to not leave me stranded. It's a piece of machinery. It can break down. As much as I might be a nerd and pour over my bikes all the time, those kind of pre-ride inspections and stuff goes wrong. It just does. And so, you don't want to be in the middle of the woods with no cell phone service. Start that again.
And nobody.
You don't want to be in the middle of the woods with no cell phone service and nobody, or worse still, and be hurt and not have any way to get yourself out of that. So,
good advice. So this is the last question, I think. So May is Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month here in Canada and other countries around the world. MCC promotes motorcycle safety through the annual national campaign, and this year the theme is watch out for each other. So what does that mean for you? How do you and your friends watch out for each other when riding, whether it's off-road or on-road?
When I ride in a group, it's such a well-oiled machine. The guys that I ride with, we know where our positions are, and we can anticipate. And some guys are just happier being up front, some guys are happier being in the back, and everyone's got their kind of happy place. But riding as a group, it just gives you such a bigger footprint on the road. When we're off-road, it's the same thing. It's just there's more confidence that comes along with it in what you're doing and looking out for each other. But it's also a mindset too of being aware of all the people that are out there riding. So when I am in a car or in a different vehicle out there riding, knowing that I am a rider and looking out for other bikes, just because I'm not on a bike that day. And then you find that when you're on a motorcycle and you see things happening or people cutting lane, doing things that are unsafe, whether they realize it or not, it just makes you that much more hyper aware, regardless of what you're driving or where you're going, what you're doing at all times, to kind of, there are other people out here doing the same thing at the same time, sort of thing. And then I'd also mentioned to you at the beginning, becoming a father was another huge switch in your head to kind of get through, to get over. Being aware of your own sense of mortality and realizing that there are other people who don't ride, who are waiting for you at home, and there's a huge amount of responsibility with that. It doesn't take away from my joy of riding. It just puts me in the right mindset to realize that, even if I wanted to make a poor decision, it's not just for me anymore. It's for other people that rely on you as well. So,
Oh man, that's great. Since the pandemic began, there's a lot of people who have gotten either back into riding or have taken it up for the first time. It's like the ultimate form of socially distanced transportation and recreation. It's certainly a great way to blow the cobwebs out of your head. And so, obviously it's great that there's more people becoming motorcyclists. But we really encourage new riders, or people who are just getting back into it, to ride with somebody who's got more experience, because it's always great to have a mentor, a coach, somebody who can actually help you specifically with your skills.
Absolutely.
So that's one of the things that when we talk about watch out for each other, I think that the motorcycling community is one of looking for ways to support each other.
Sure. The other thing too I find is there's an obvious benefit with new riders riding with riders who are a lot more experienced. There's also a trade-off the other way as well, with new riders who have just gone through recent training to kind of, kind of tweak the screws, tighten the screws a little bit on those who have maybe developed bad habits over a long time. And I'm one of those as well. And again, I notice that in all of the things that I do, whether I'm diving, whether I'm flying, whether I'm riding an airplane. You get to certain plateaus where you've had a certain number of hours of flying or diving or hours riding, that you might just start to naturally become a bit complacent, and that's when, maybe new riders can kind of help tighten the screws a little bit too, and say like, I saw you kind of like straddling the lane a little bit there, whatever, and that's all in good fun, but it also keeps us sharp too. So.
So you have young children, but you can look forward to the point at which your kids will actually have completed a driving program, and they're going to start looking and
Calling you out.
Which, been
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
So it's actually it's a really good point that we can all learn from each other,
Sure.
and sometimes somebody who's had fresh training and been thinking about it might have something to help with the veteran rider who's
Absolutely.
maybe doing a little backsliding on the skills.
Absolutely.
Certainly, you get. I think that the part of how you ride is influenced by, your confidence level and everything. But I think you use the word complacency. I think is really good. Is that you can't afford to become complacent
Yeah.
when you got two wheels.
And how you ride, it depends a lot on the people you ride with as well. And so surrounding yourself with people who you feel comfortable with. They might have a lot more experience, and that's not necessarily to feel inadequate, because you can learn so much from them. But you start to ride with people that are riding way faster than you might, or whatever it might be. If it starts to make you feel uncomfortable, that's not the kind of stuff you want to align with. And I found that too. I've ridden with some people that you just don't line up well with, and so that's fine. I ride with people that we line up very well with, that after 7 days we don't want to wring each other's necks, because we're all feeling the same way, we all think the same way, we all ride the same way. So
That's great. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking time.